My name is Chris Plano, and I'm the Manager of Alumni Relations at JW Charlotte Campus. Thank you for joining us for tonight's session, Sip with JWU, Summer Wines. We're so excited to bring you this program and look forward to learning about some great summer wines now that we are into those hot summer months. Before we get started, I'd like to review a few housekeeping items. Your mics have been muted, but please keep your cameras on. We'd like to keep this session as interactive as possible. If you'd like to ask a question, please use the raise your hand feature and we'll call on you. You can also ask a question in the chat box as well, and I will read it aloud to tonight's presenter. Since this program is virtual, let's keep it social. Feel free to share pictures of your home setup, maybe a selfie, a photo. And if you're enjoying tonight's session, be sure to tag at JW Alumni in your posts on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I'd now like to introduce tonight's presenter, Caitlyn Gillette, class of 2012. Caitlyn was born in Charlotte, North Carolina, and still calls it home today. Growing up, the travel and hospitality worlds heavily influenced her upbringing and ultimately her high school and career decisions. She received her bachelor's in sports entertainment and event management and a minor in beverage management. While attending, she also completed her WSET Level 2 certification. Ultimately, she obtained her Level 1 sommelier and certified specialist of wine as well. Caitlyn's first career path was in event management, where at the peak, she was the event coordinator for Spectrum Arena, home to the NBA's Charlotte Hornets, and acted as lead project manager for the 2012 Democratic National Convention. It wasn't until the stars aligned that she found herself taking on a top sales position in downtown Charlotte with a boutique wine distributor. The path continued to switching distribution companies for a key account and on-premise manager roles for the Charlotte division. Next thing she knew, Caitlyn was on her FaceTime call with Georges and Daniel Dow as their new regional manager for the Southeast and dreaming of something much bigger than she could have ever imagined. She is now the division manager of the Mid-Atlantic for Dow Family Estates, which oversees a team in the Carolinas, Tennessee, and Virginia. There is no dreaming now with Dow because she has found her home and her family. The path is clear that Dow is doing tremendous things and Caitlyn is coming with them. We are so grateful to have you this evening, Caitlyn. Please join me in welcoming Caitlyn Gillette.
Thanks, Chris. That was such a good intro. I need to bring you to all my events every day.
Okay.
Like, hello. Hey, everybody. Let me put this aside so I don't look at it there. I have my cheat sheet in front of me. I was so excited when they reached out for me to be able to do this. I've done a few wine things at the Charlotte campus, having lived in Charlotte, but this is my first time I've been able to kind of reach the broader alumni base. So this is really exciting for me, fun for me to share, not just everything, some pieces I've put together the last, I guess I graduated 10 years ago when I graduated, put together kind of what I've taken out of the wine industry. And also, of course, my background being with Dow for about 5 years now. And just kind of putting those pieces together. And actually leading up to COVID, I started on the side, because I guess, a bunch of JWU kids, God forbid we have one job. So at one point I was also teaching some wine classes for a startup company called Skill Pop, and just really learned about myself that it's fun to kind of take this knowledge and take these personal insights and be able to share these, not just from a, geek out wine level, but also just be able to take the big picture and kind of how can you use it every day, or how can you take this to maybe social events or work events, or even just for a hobby. So actually on that note, let me move my thing over so I can see y'all. So let's see, I can see Bruce and Bruce's buddy. Hi. I wanted to ask really quickly, how, if you had like a 101, a 201, or like I'm an expert on wine, like if there's a master sommelier here, let me know so I know I'll be fact checked. But where are you guys on wine knowledge? Kind of what is this something that you've been doing for fun? Is this a work for you? Just curious. I'd love to kind of hear from everybody out there.
Well, for me, it's been part of my career for 40 plus years.
Career. Got it. Fact checker. I was kidding. I'm messing with you. Awesome.
And always try to, drink any type of wine with different foods, whether it be moderate priced, high end, or something new. So with this opportunity, never had a Zoom meeting online wine tasting, so why not give it a try? And two wines and a winemaker that we've never heard of.
There we go. I'm glad I could expose you to what we're doing at Dow too. Thanks, Bruce. And then too, I can see the chat too if y'all want to just type in 101, 201, or send me the quiz now.
Okay.
Let me close the chat that over there so I can hear better. So on that note, go ahead and start sharing, Chris and Liza. That sound good? Awesome. I'm going to share this one. Everybody can see? Awesome. Well, we knew that one. So before we dive into the wines, also, I will say, well, come on, buddy. There we go. Please go ahead and pour your wine. I might start talking about something that's not specifically the wine we're going to be drinking, but I'll go ahead and pour some with you. So don't have an empty glass during the beginning of this by all means. So really, when I think of summer or any season for that matter, the first thing that comes to mind personally is where it grows, it goes. And that kind of quite literally means if it grows near, say, a maritime climate, it tends to be paired well with, say, shellfish or something, of course, that derives from the maritime. Or if you are near particular, you could even go down to like vegetables or, essentially what the whole process, the whole background of wine, the history of wine really was, of course, built in the old world. So you can kind of see, I'm not sure if it's too much of an eye chart for you guys, but that yellow color is, as you can tell, is Europe. And that's where the background of wine came from and was originally planted and cultivated. And during that time, it wasn't like California where we had marketing data and we could choose exactly what we wanted to plant. There was already a foundation made in the wine industry and a consumer basis in the wine industry for the most part. They were starting these vines in the scope of the fact that they needed to be planting in that specific area. And over time, they found out these specific grapes, whether it be Cabernet and Bordeaux or Chardonnay and Pinot Noir in the Champagne region, they eventually learned these were the pinnacle of their area. So ultimately, at the end of the day, too, that also means what you're growing around it and what your seasonal harvests are going to be tend to be matching where your wine's coming from. So I think what's so fun about spring and summer, for that matter, it's kind of can be easy to group those in together, which probably makes plenty of sense for you guys. That's what's so fun about this season and this climate these climates, because you're getting these beautiful, exciting, fresh harvest every day. This is like a chef's dream right now with tomato season, cucumber, fresh herbs, you name it, whatever is kind of coming into season. So that's essentially what I found is just the first thing to be really fun about summer wines. It's the time frame we're totally drinking whites, which we want to drink fresh. Very typically, I don't know if there's a percentage out there, but for the most part, most white wines are meant to drink as fresh as possible. Rosé also can be meant to drink fresh as possible. Isn't the one all fits. Of course, there's Chardonnay and some very beautifully aged rosés out there, but your fresh Sauvignon Blancs and your Vinho Verdes, which quite literally translates to fresh wine in Portuguese. These are made for right after they've come out of harvest in about September. They go through the process to become wine, and then ultimately, they've been bottled by January, February, or something of that nature. So by the time that we have our harvest on the table, we have these beautiful, fresh, vibrant white wines. And so we don't have a white wine today. The rosé, of course, we do have. We'll be doing some bubbles, because if you did know, I'm trying to see if I know anybody yet on here. I wish we had bubbles at Dow, because that's what I could drink every day. It's hard for me not to say drink bubbles in the summer, because they just go so well. And then I also was going to speak to a red blend today. But the other thing that I find really interesting about once you start understanding the concept of where your wine comes from, quite literally, it can kind of help you grasp a better scope of what you might enjoy. So I'm just gonna use the same example throughout, which is our property, which is Paso Robles, California. And that is an area that is high elevation and very calcareous soils. And actually, am I gonna jump ahead? Oh, let's see. Yep, I will just go ahead and jump ahead. How about that? Very calcareous soils, and a few things that I know are coming out of the winery. Actually, if you look at my background, you can see the soil kind of peeking through all the green vines. It's just incredibly sandy, calcareous minerality. You know, it lends to a lot of things without going down that rabbit hole quite yet. So if I knew, as somebody who loves Paso Robles or Dow or whatever it may be, that high elevation and calcareous soils and maybe a moderate to warm climate is where I'm at, well, I can start to learn where those other ones are. So I can instantly go ahead and tell you that I probably love high elevation fruit in Napa. So like Diamond or Spring Mountain. I instantly, even though elevation plays a different role, the soil type Bordeaux is going to be a quick jump into what I might enjoy. And so understanding where that wine came from, I'll jump back to stay on theme here, is understanding where you might want to go after that. Does that make sense? More or less. And for me, that's just something, again, for some of my people who are still trying to really understand what, what's something to do socially or what's something to bring to the table at work, or just for my hobby of expanding outside of, oh, I know I like this, what else may I like? For me, that's a really good way to look at it as we go into the tasting portion and learn a little bit here. So I did jump ahead. This was a quick look, of course, at Bordeaux and then at California. The whole story behind why I'm comparing these two is quite literally the story of the company I'm with. The two gentlemen, George and Daniel Dow, they are brothers that were actually born in Lebanon, but ultimately grew up in France and just had a real, true passion for certainly this French style of winemaking and the background of what that terroir looks like. And so when we were seeking our property, we've been it's about 16 years old now. This is pretty much exactly what we were trying to replicate, is finding the soil type almost similar, if not close to enough to, say exact, even if it's on the other side of the world, to France. So when we stumbled across the property we're on personally, we looked at the soil types, and very, very similar to Saint-Emilion in Bordeaux. And that was a huge piece for us. And that's what, having been with Dow for about 5 years now, really got to understand how big these different roles are. I mean, I know, doing all the wine tests and everything, of course, I knew soil was, obviously played a huge role. It's a harvest. It's a well, I'm trying to say tangible, to use the wrong word, but it is something that, of course, the soil type is heavily impacting. But when you focus on 200 acres for a living, you start to really appreciate exactly what's going on and, why these things matter. And again, you can get even further more into elevation and things like that. And another thing too, that I always understood, but really saw highlighted, again, having such a focus on this wine, was a big role, say in Napa, is more of a winemaker focus. So we're really looking at highlighting the person making the wine, and we're highlighting a lot of the winemaking styles. So, highlighting different types of winemaking, like malolactic fermentation in Chardonnay or whatever it may be, and that's not every single winery, of course, I'm just kind of speaking broadly. And then you have somebody like Paso Robles, which is this newer kind of area coming in. And we really are seeing a shift in that California mentality down here to an outlook of a vineyard focused mentality. And that just means that, of course, we have a winery named after our winemaker. Of course, we love talking about what Danny does, but at the end of the day, it is a focus on what we're getting of our terroir. They usually like to I hear the phrase a lot of shepherd of the land. So what we're able to do is focus truly on what we're doing all the time, or excuse me, every day during harvest, all the way up through veraison and everything. Actually through harvest all the way up to, spoke backwards, you know what I mean? But we're able to see that come to fruition, and we want to really taste that vintage and taste our terroir in the glass and not manipulate it after that. And that's, again, our neighbors are kind of focusing on similar things, and that's definitely highlighted a lot in especially the old world. Any questions on words I've said like old world or terroir, or please don't hesitate to ask. And then as we almost jump into the wines here, a little bit tasting science for you, because I just feel like this is something that really eye-opening when we go in to taste these wines right here. So when a really unique thing that I actually didn't learn this with Johnson & Wales. I learned this one, God, where was I? I was in a tasting room somewhere, and we sit down and we had a like charcuterie plate, and like what looked like exactly what you thought a tasting was going to look like. How many hundreds of these have I done now? But at the same time, then they come around and hand us like a cup of jelly beans. I was like, well, this one's new. Like, let's see what's going to happen. And they said, everybody grab, your jelly bean and hold your nose and eat your jelly bean. And, without assuming, what the color is supposed to taste like what flavor is it? And while you're holding your nose, no one could answer what flavor it was, whether it's strawberry, bubblegum, mint, I don't know, whatever it might have been. Is there really a mint jelly bean? That was a weird one. I don't think it's actually mint jelly bean, but anyways. So what was really interesting is the only thing, again, you could perceive was that sweet flavor. Well, ultimately that makes a lot of sense when you stopped and thought about the science of it, because your tongue, your taste buds, your receptors only have 5 different flavors, which is sweet, sour, bitter, salty, and umami. And that is all your tongue is able to access, all your taste buds are able to access. It's actually your olfactory system, which is your nose, that is the one pulling all the different extra kind of smells or flavors, or, that perception of what you're actually tasting. So I believe, if this is my fact check one, if anybody's on here, I believe it's like 4. It starts with a 4, it might be 4 or 40,000. I should have fact checked myself before I started this, but there's a set amount of number that essentially humans are able to smell and perceive. I think it is like dogs have less, people have more, all these kind of things. And then you hear the term super tasters. So super tasters, actually their actual, palate, like this palate isn't as exciting as it's really their olfactory system is probably the one that's firing all cylinders, which I found just incredibly unique. You also find that maybe if you grew up in a certain different type of, region or area, you might be prone to think of things that you grew up thinking of. Oh, I did just notice the chat, by the way, my bad. 3, I just saw it. So you might, like my number one example is I grew up in the South. So for me, honeysuckles usually is something I might go to, where maybe somebody else might go to like just a white flower. I can't think of exactly what they go to, but honeysuckles, for example, were always in my backyard. So I tend to smell that on particular white wines quicker than maybe somebody else would. So next time, if you're going to a wine tasting and you want to pull out a party trick, do the jelly bean trick. And it's kind of fun. It's a cool little talking point, I think, for if you're trying to kind of lead your own wine tasting. And also I'll stop and tell you too, since we're with college and alumni, I'll make sure I credit my sources after all my papers those years ago. I'm pretty sure almost every single, picture, if you will, up here was Wine Folly. And I'm sure a lot of you already know about that publication. They have at least 2 books now. I personally just love them for tastings of this level. They're not you can get the Wine Bible and you can get a bunch of, really in-depth stuff, but Wine Folly is just a really great book to have if you're starting to get into wine, or if you're just kind of looking for some 10,000 foot view without it being too 10,000 feet. I'm just a really big fan of what they do. And actually, they've got really pretty hard copies. It's my desk kind of prettiness on my desk is the Wine Folly books. Okay, so now finally, if I can get it to the next slide. Hope y'all are drinking your wine already, but we've technically made it to the first wine. Let's see. Before we start, I of course have none other than our Dow Rosé, of course. What are you guys, anybody else drinking Dow, or y'all drinking a different rosé? I'd love to hear what everybody has so we can kind of, and I'll look at the chat too here. Oh, sorry, Quentin, I just saw that too. I'll go back to that one in a second, Quentin, and then, but I'll stick to the rosé question. Yeah, which rosés are y'all drinking? Woo, yay, Bruce. Oh yeah, Cote. That's a popular one. The Cotes de, I don't know if it's Cotes de Rose or just rosé, but I know it's the bottle with the pretty flower at the bottom, like the glasses. Yep. I know my rosé as well. Woo, yay, Cassandra, glad you got Dow. So for the most, I actually love, Liza, that you have French, because I can, you see a theme here. We definitely, operate in respectfully comparing ourselves to French wines. So fun. Rosé and why summer, exactly the reason we're all here tonight to kind of understand or learn, I should say, my perception of what summer wine is. And it was probably very clear that, of course, rosé was going to be here. It's a wine that they typically release about February, March, based off where you're coming out of, whether it's Bandal, Tavel, California, whatever it may be. For the most part, you're looking at like February, March. So they start really releasing in the spring, as do a lot of whites and whatnot. Releases coming in the summer might be closer to like Chardonnays because they have some oak treatment. So they take a little bit longer before they're kind of getting to you essentially. But rosé is still showing just so fresh and so beautifully and very vibrant. And that, again, I keep talking about that freshness. You just get more like, so if you want to actually go ahead and smell and taste, for sure the Dow Rosé, I'm sure yours is still just like that, the Côte de Rose. Liza, you'll notice, I guess you don't have anything to compare it to, but assuming if you're drinking the 2021, that's the one that we just bottled in February. So we're still going to be getting a ton of really nice, beautiful tropical fruit even on the nose. I tend to get for sure like strawberry, things that maybe won't come across a little bit later. And you'll start to get a little bit more of kind of like that minerality, and some of those acids will come out as the wine ages, which is completely fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Just that's what kind of, that's the excitingness of it. Kind of, that's the whole concept too behind Beaujolais Nouveau, if you're familiar with that whole idea as well. And one thing too about rosés is really, this is also a good chance, I should say, to also, and I'll allude to it when we talk about bubbles, but one thing, if, I'm sure I'm not missing anybody. Oh yeah, let me keep the chopping and stop exiting it so I can actually see what y'all are saying. There we go. She doesn't. Ooh, sweet olive oil. I like it. We have actually a ton of olive trees on the property. Let me take a sip now. Now I'm not gonna get away from like almost like a Bruce, like a not brininess, but you made me think of olives when I just tasted that, and I feel like I'm almost getting that like mouth feel of olives now when I just took a sip of that. See, it can be about perception. Oh, so one thing about rosés, does everybody know how a rosé is made? Is that and I'll still go over it quickly, but if you didn't know, one thing that's really unique about rosés is it's of course, in the middle of white and red wine. I mean, it's pink. You probably got that one. But what's really unique is they can be made in a lot of different ways, whether you're just kind of slowly extracting the color from the skins, just not quite as much as red wine, or you can have bleed over, you can have blending. So you can do a lot of different ways to obtain a pink color. And that's why it's definitely one of those wines, probably like a lot of them, but for sure rosés, they're not all, created equally, if you will. So that's one of the things too, to start learning. If you want to kind of dive into what rosés you like, start learning how they're made. Personally, what we're doing is we use a champagne press, which is just like, honestly, it looks like a big basket that sits right on top of the grapes. So we put the grapes in the vat and let that just naturally, like we don't physically push it, we just let its weight push it down. So kind of introduce gravity. And what that will do is that essentially gets us to practically a free run product or a first press product. And why that's a good thing and why it's actually something fun to maybe ask when you're looking for rosés or even red wines for that matter or really all wines, I don't know why I'm saying just red, but what's unique about that is when you have a grape and it's, circle that I'm holding my hands up to, all the good stuff is right on the outsides of the grape. So that's where your sugar content is. That's where a lot of your flavor profile is coming from. And then of course the skins gives you a ton of that flavor profile as well. Once you start getting into the middle of the grape where the seeds are, that's where a lot of your more astringent, harsh acids are going to be coming from. So, like when you eat an apple and as the closer you get to the core, the more like bitter it gets, or sour, I maybe is a better word for it gets. It's just like a grape. Actually, if I remember from my good old book knowledge, it is chemically the beginning of a grape, like the acid in it is almost very similar to like nail polish remover. I mean, it's pretty harsh. So the further we stay away from that middle of the grape, the better. And if we are, for lack of a better word, can I say crap, Chris? Is that okay? If we're smushing the crap out of it, we're getting to the point that we're pulling all those astringent acids out of them. And we're having to supplement with sugar because it's so harsh. We need something to put on top of it. So when we're only doing that free run process, we get the beautiful, I think the Wine Bible calls it the nectar of the gods or something really elaborate like that. So that's what we're doing on this product. And you certainly see that out there. And it's of course a great way to be looking at rosé, because that means that this rosé is made for this wine. Because a lot of times rosés can be an afterthought. They're, like I said, blended or bleed over or something that is, not to the level of winemaking that maybe your palate wants. This is a good way to say that. How about that? Let me see my other notes on rosé before I answer this question really quickly. Easy. Yeah, and the other one here is quick little note too about pairings is assuming you're drinking a balanced rosé, assuming it's something like Dow Rosé or a Provence or a Côte d'Aron, like Liza has. Those wines are typically going to be very balanced. I love to use the word integrated. So those wines are very quickly easy to pair because they're not going to overwhelm any of your dishes, and they have a lot of different components from fruit to acid. So you can easily pair things where sometimes a lot of white wines might be a little bit overly acidic and don't have that fruit complex or whatever it may be. So typically some of the easiest wines to pair are absolutely rosé and bubbles. But for me, this wine, if I'm pairing it like a grilled peach or like a grilled fruit, I don't know why, it just sounds really fun with it, paired with absolutely like, again, grilled or ceviche maybe even can hold up to this because that fruit, that nice condensation of fruit on the front. Ceviche is just when you essentially soak like shrimp or something like that in lime, you cook it with lime essentially. I've done that a lot with this product. Also, chefs love grilled octopus with this wine. I do a ton of wine dinners for a living, and grilled octopus is always a go-to here. Personally, don't know how to cook octopus. I've had it done very, very well because of my line of work, which I'm very thankful for, but I couldn't cook it to save my life. But I'm gonna go back to the Unami question, but what's y'all's thoughts on rosé? Y'all have anything for me? I won't watch the chat this time. I got it up. Okay, so let me go back. Whoopsies. So Unami was the exact question. Oh, brief description. So Unami was really introduced as the fifth sense. After the four senses. So sour, sweet, bitter, and salty have always been a staple. Unami is that fifth kind of curveball, maybe, if you will. And it's really derived from, Asian cuisine and different things derived in Asian cuisine, Asian culture. So it's going to be flavors like soy sauce, mushrooms, that almost earthiness is the best way to put it. That's usually how it's best described, is kind of that earthiness. And again, mushrooms and soy sauce, and I'm missing a key one. If anybody can think of it, let me know. But those are the key Unami flavors. Does that make sense? Let's see if I'm missing a video. Yay, okay. Doesn't like switching slides for me. Did anybody open up any bubbles? Ooh. Come on, buddy. There we go. So once again, I also feel the same way about bubbles. Probably feel the same about all wine, but that they're not all created equal. But I guess I just keep bringing it up here. Bubbles are really unique, and this is something that you guys might have done classes on. I know there's tons of knowledge and seminars and so much around bubbles because they're so fun and they're really intriguing to learn about, because there's so many different layers of how, what, those kind of things. Very similar to rosé. Some random little facts I put on here for you guys before we talk about pairings was, I was saying, just if you didn't know, champagne is from Champagne. That might come from a lifelong of me having to deal with my friends who order La Marca Prosecco and call it champagne, and it drives me okay, I have to correct them. So champagne is actually from Champagne, and it is made with Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, and Pinot Meunier are going to be the grapes that go into that. And if you notice, two of those are actually red wine. So something unique that really is eye-opening if you weren't exactly, if you're learning a little bit more about winemaking, is that at the end of the day, a grape produces essentially white juice. It's all but like 3 varieties actually produce that white juice. So when you go to make that wine, if you're not leaving any skin contact, you can technically make a white wine out of any red, what's perceived as red wine or a red grape. It's just a matter of leaving that skin contact on. So for champagne, we're going to have 2 of those red grapes and just not have any skin contact for the most part. Something else too is, again, from questions I always get asked is, well, how do I buy wine that doesn't cost me, $60 for champagne? Because it's, of course, not a cheap wine. So champagne on a beer budget would include, for sure, cava, which is out of Spain. It's kind of their rendition of a champagne, different varietals, a little bit more acidic, a little bit lighter in flavor profile than you'd see in France. But they're essentially made in the same way, which is introducing yeast versus actually just adding gas or something like that straight into the wine. Also, Cremant is another good one to look for. So again, if you just want something that might not run you as much as a champagne, my go-to is like a Cremant de Loire or a Cremant de Bourgogne, which is just bubbles from Loire Valley or bubbles from Burgundy, if you want that translated. But or say it really French. And again, impressive, fun little party trick to make it sound like you speak French, but really don't. You just are really good at sounding out a wine label. That one's always fun too. But Cremant is really just, America's adapted, or you say US adapted it a little bit, I believe, but it's a way of saying it's champagne made somewhere outside of Champagne. So they're making champagne styles in Burgundy. So Cremant de Bourgogne, Cremant de Burgundy. And then I already mentioned that Prosecco, which is out of Italy, is made inserting gas in, again, a different grape variety. So that's why if you've ever noticed Prosecco and champagne don't exactly taste the same, or even have the same bubble kind of familiarity, that's why. And absolutely, champagne is one of the most food friendly wines out there. When I was working with an importer out of France and would go around and, show champagnes and things like that, I love taking just like Lay's potato chips, or even like like maybe kettle cooked, probably paired a little bit better, like a nice kettle cooked potato chip, because it gave the perception that champagne, while expensive and considered, something you celebrate with or a luxury product, it's something that actually is really can go with, honestly, fried potatoes. Like, it's great. That's one of its best pairings. So if I ever go down, please make sure I have some champagne. And actually, if I had a last meal, it'd probably be champagne with kettle cooked potato chips with like caviar and creme fraiche. If you haven't had that before, I know that's a very specific thing, but oh my God, it's life-changing. So good. Okay, let's see. Interesting fact I'm hearing more about recently from certain crowds. Oh yeah. Hold on, let me read that one again quick. Oh, saying, I thought you were about to tell me one. Yeah, I've been hearing more about. Yeah, it is. I mean, it's, hope it didn't sound like I was a brat that I corrected them, but it's really interesting because it's all perceived as bubbles and it's called champagne all the time. But with things like Prosecco, once you learn how it's made, and there's beautiful Prosecco, it's not like that it's a negative connotation towards what they are. It's just, it has a different flavor profile and a different mouthfeel because it's absolutely made in a different way, but you still get beautiful bubbles and beautiful pairings. And so yeah, it is really, I didn't know that till I got to wine school. Portuguese. Ooh. Actually, funny enough, I speak to Portuguese wine in the next one. Do you know what varietals are in that, Bruce? I'm curious. Does it say?
Let me have a look.
I used to have a huge Portuguese book I sold, and I found it. I loved it. But I haven't dipped my toes in the water of Portugal in a while. I also didn't ask what everybody else was drinking too. While Bruce looks that up, if he can see it, let me know what bubbles y'all are drinking.
The print is far too small to tell you the varietals.
All good. I was just curious. Just curious. I'll look. Is it good?
Oh, it's delicious. It's one of our favorite non-champagne sparklings.
Okay. Tavara Verasa. I'm gonna write that one down. Oh, yeah, I know exactly which one you're drinking. Liza, I've seen that. That one's one I'm gonna go to for
and it's a rosé also.
Ooh. Okay, I'll have to try that one. I trust your palate, obviously.
Delicious.
Okay, I'm looking for that one next. Anybody else want to share what they're drinking? Because I forgot, I gave some recommendations that I like, but we don't make bubbles, but I wanted to highlight some. So let me know if you're drinking anything fun. One of the ones that's really easily accessible that I've been grabbing a lot is actually shockingly out of New Mexico. It's called Gruet, Gruet. I have no, this is just me telling you, I don't have any affiliation or anything like that, but it is, it's oddly good, and you can find it for less than $20. It's been a go-to for me. Cava, that one's always a staple. Cava is always, it's a great go-to. I prefer Cava on like my mimosa bar too, personally, because for me, Prosecco and orange juice or any added something is too sweet, personally. And then if you're getting a really high-end Prosecco, I don't want to pour juice into it. So for me, if I'm looking for an inexpensive Cava or inexpensive something for like a mimosa or French 75 or different type of sparkling cocktails, I personally, again, like to go with a Cava. Awesome. Any questions about bubbles for that matter? Okay, red blends. And I think we're actually doing really well because it is, oh yeah, we wanted to open up questions about 6:45. So we'll speak to, again, I don't know why it hates it next. Let me, there's a little, give myself a dump bucket to,
Too bad I couldn't take a picture of that.
come on, buddy. Maybe if I turn the chat off, it'll let me go next.
Well, thank you, Caitlin, for that information up to now. Very, very informative. And certainly we can open the floor up at this time. I know we've already had some great dialogue, but any specific questions to what we spoke about tonight concerning summer wines or maybe even just wines in general, let's definitely utilize this time for any Q&A and interaction, certainly.
My red wine poured here too. We'll wrap up this last wine too, Chris, while we do questions. We'll kind of pour this in. It can be an open red wine.
Absolutely.
So did everybody get Pessimist, by the way, or do we have some other red blends out there? Same thing. Oh, let me pull my chat back up. Oh yeah. Oh God, what's the one? There's one that I've been drinking. It looks like Cristal, but it's not Cristal, of course, but it has similar writing. It
You know what?
or another, or there's also the one I've been buying a lot is La Poema. Really, I haven't been steered wrong with cavas for the most part, especially when I'm using it for mimosas. They usually are a pretty safe bet, but it was the one that I just love if I want to, like quickly, like if I'm at a grocery store and need something accessible, that if I'm not going to like a wine shop to get something a little bit more exact, is the Gruyere sparkling. If you sparkling for just by it. I've been having, whoops, I typed self wrong, but you know what I mean? That's one of my random go-tos. I have a ton of go-tos, but that one I've just noticed a lot of really good prices on recently. And I think it's kind of cool. It's from New Mexico. It's kind of fun. So let's see when, so we're drinking Pessimist. That's what y'all asked. So this is our Bean Dow's red wine. Well, of course it's red wine, red blend. It's a blend of Petite Syrah, Zinfandel, and Grenache. And for us, this is kind of our Ode Paso wine because it's not necessarily what stereotypical French varietals that we tend to do mainly on our property. So for Daniel, for our winemaker, Daniel Dow, this was like him having just a ton of fun, honestly, with so much access to be like a candy store down in Paso. And why I love this wine for summer is while it totally screams fall, sometimes it also very much screams grilled barbecue wine, foods. It's probably one of my most food friendly wines that I've had, not even just sell, but I've had. I mean, it holds up to char, it holds up to spiciness even. I'm not saying this is your best pairing with something spicy, but especially, I'm in the Southeast, so we do definitely see, lots of spice in our food, some spicy characteristics, and it can actually hold up to that. So if you're actually drinking this wine, let me pour this one out here. Hold on, guys. I only had one cup here. There we go. Let me get some Pessimist in my glass with you guys. It has that nice, beautiful kind of ripe fruit on the front. And again, that's what holds up to a lot of those different flavor profiles, but it also kind of finishes with a kind of gritty tannins to it, a little bit more tighter tannins, but not in a way where it's really gripping your mouth like maybe a Cabernet would, but enough to make it hold up to meats and different things like that. And then I always get really unique things almost every time I taste this wine. I've been selling this wine for 5 years. One of my ones I've been getting recently is almost like an orange zest, like kind of a very vibrant orange zest, especially on the palate. Yeah, agreed. This wine's a value, to use the correct word. I think Danny could charge a lot more for his wines. He does an amazing job. So this is just a great example of, if you haven't been exposed to red blends, very biased, but I think this is one of the absolutely the better made ones. It's not Zin heavy, or it's not made with Zin. I love Zin. There's plenty of Zins out there I love, but I don't love Zin blends. I find them just a little bit too potent and hard to pair. So for me, the fruitiness of this Petite Syrah, a little bit of tannins again, just makes it so much more crowd friendly. And really, if you need a wine, it would be a sales pitch even at work for Dow, but if you need a wine to take to your next like crowd, event or social event or barbecue, this is one that it just honestly, everybody tends to like it. I've never really met anybody that hated this wine, but it does go for a lot of red blends, because the goal is to make them balanced, and they blend them to integrate different flavors. If you're making a singular variety, naturally those are going to have, they're going to put themselves in a box. Respectfully, that's the whole point of it. It's not like that's bad, but with blends, you get to really expand on that. And it's a really fun category to learn about. You're starting to really really starting to dive into different wines. Definitely explore red blends, and you can expose yourself to different things, different types of varieties. Again, like Zinfandel is really fun. That tends to be a key blender out there. We personally have one that's Petit Verdot heavy. It's the heaviest blend with Petit Verdot. That's fun. And definitely lots of Syrah based stuff. I think I had mentioned to Chris to note to people to get Syrah based wines if they didn't get ours. But it's a category that is just really fun to rabbit hole into. You can learn a lot about your palate with red blends. And yeah, that's let's see. I think we did good, Chris. I'm pretty much on schedule.
We are right on time. So I got about 9 minutes left in the program this evening. So we certainly, like I stated a few seconds ago, we can certainly unmute our mics, or if you like to type a question in the chat area, we can certainly keep it interactive with Caitlyn. If you had any questions, we can certainly utilize that time here and maybe even pick her brain a little bit more.
Absolutely. Typing this in here for you guys. Oh, yes. Oh, you didn't see that, but thanks.
There you go.
I'm typing my email in here in case. I was going to say, if anybody finds themselves in California or Paso Robles, I'd love to have you as my guest on the property at the winery. So shoot me an email if you find yourself out there, by all means, or anything else. But I did want to extend an invite to anybody who finds their way to Paso Robles, California, to come see us. Pessimist is going to be Petite Syrah, Zin, and Grenache are the four wines. Grenache only about 4%, Zinfandel about 14%, Syrah in the 20s, and Petite Syrah being the base of it. Hopefully
Great questions, Stephen. Great questions.
And if anybody has questions, you can feel free to unmute your microphone and just ask them at this point.
Yeah, absolutely.
Open space. Yeah, these have we pivoted to doing virtual events, of course, during the past 2 years, and really they've been a great way to be able to access more and more people, because before it was harder to kind of talk people into maybe having access to the winemaker or something like that virtually. And now I do find these to be really fun to still expand past, just physically being somewhere. And I think there's a lot of fun and good that came out of getting used to these Zoom things, because why not, open your laptop as an excuse to open up 3 bottles of wine? Sure.
Absolutely.
Why not?
Absolutely. Well, what I do want to do is I want to thank everyone for being here this evening. This has been very informative for myself. I've definitely learned a lot here over the last little over 50 minutes or so. But thank you, Caitlyn, for taking time out of your schedule and putting this PowerPoint together and giving us of your time and knowledge over the last hour. It was an amazing program, and we're very proud of you as well, and your successes in the wine and beverage industry, and keep up the great work.
Thanks, Chris. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. And at this time, I'd now like to introduce Liza Gentile, Director of Alumni Relations, with some parting remarks in the closing of tonight's program.
Great. Thank you so much, Chris. Yes, Quentin, I see that you have your hand raised. I'll let you ask your question first.
Absolutely. Yes.
Sorry, I just want to say thank you first and foremost, but I did have one quick question just as far as like, I guess within the past years with everything kind of shifting and changing, have you noticed anything as far as like the soil or some of the products? I'm pretty sure some of the people who've kind of out in the field haven't noticed anything, but have you noticed anything or experienced anything within the past few years as far as everything shifting, and or I guess certain people buying up farms and land? And I don't know if you guys still have to where like you're still fighting for land to where you're able to still grow and produce and still be able to create, but I was just kind of curious in that aspect.
No, that's a question I wish more people would ask, because it's really interesting. A shift that's happening is where we are. We're not that there's not shifts elsewhere, but there is real talk of climate change affecting, where we're growing, not just we being Dow, but we being the wine industry, where and how things are growing. Actually, one pretty talked about area is the fact that Southern England is getting into the kind of champagne style of winemaking, because now that they've had a harder time producing year after year in places like Burgundy and Champagne, France, we're seeing, some shift to people getting some really good results out of Southern France, as an example of your question. Not saying Southern England, not saying Southern England's the next Champagne or anything, but it's certainly noticeable that there's been some movement and some real revelation coming out of there. And then for us in California, Napa has seen heat after heat after heat. And of course, they've been affected by the fires a lot as well. So, very, very unfortunate. We don't want people to have to leave Napa, because Napa absolutely is a reason why California is a staple, even outside of the United States in terms of the wine industry. But we've seen a ton of Napa winemakers come to Paso, actually. Wagner came down, David Finney's come down. I mean, a bunch of really prominent guys from up there have started buying property in Paso. And specifically, what are the numbers? When Danny planted, there was less than 200 wineries. And last I heard, there was over 400 something wineries in Paso Robles. So in 10 to 15 years, it's practically doubled in acreage. And we now are out planted Napa. Our quantity was already higher than Napa because we were doing a lot of bulk juice. We being Paso, not Dow. So we've definitely seen this shift. There's a lot of talk about Central Coast shift. You're seeing people go higher elevation sometimes because of the cool air. So there's absolutely some shifting going out there. Definitely a lot of climate driven.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Yeah, I love it.
Okay. Kind of going back into the climate change, as far as like, I know California has had a lot of fires and everything, but as far as the like the droughts and the water shortage, how does that affect as far as some of the grapes that are grown to be utilized for the actual wines and such?
Yeah, no, absolutely. One nice thing about grapes is not saying all vineyards or all grapes, but for the most part, grapes can survive without water. We actually, but we actually dry farm. So we don't even have irrigation systems set up on a lot of our property. We only have irrigation systems set up in much more drought prone blocks. So just specific areas. But it's literally just a small little pipe, and we give like a gallon per acre, like every 6 weeks or something like that. It's not much at all. So if there's going to be somebody affected, it'd be maybe somebody who's growing a little bit more in quantity and bulk, who actually needs a little bit more water, because if you're not watering your grapes, you get a great flavor profile, but you decrease your production significantly. So it's kind of like a quality versus quantity situation with grapes. And so when you're watering a ton, again, you get more, but you're just getting a kind of a kind of bulking it up a little bit. So those vineyards, I haven't specifically talked to anybody who maybe I've heard it, but that would be in effect. I would say for sure, outside of at least our neighbors, probably the most affected would be almond producers. And almond trees take a ton of water, like a ton of water. And then of course, like different types of agriculture, like lettuce, guacamole, not guacamole, can't grow guacamole, avocados. Oh God, there's a chef on here I would love. Like she went to a technical culinary school. Avocado, things like that. That would be where I'm not in that industry, so I can't speak past that, but I just know they require much more water. So we actually kind of have a odd free pass on the need for water. Kind of
That's actually pretty dope. I didn't even know you can kind of create, I guess it's not really the grapes that you guys use to make the wine. It's not really used for water. What type of system is that called?
So, I mean, well, like essentially we don't irrigate. So I use the term dry farm. That just means we quite literally don't water, and we're in California, so we also don't get rain. For the most part.
Right. It never rains in California, as they say.
And it's fine. Yeah. But what's really unique, without diving too deep into it, is where we are and where a lot of places who can survive that way is our soil is so rocky. It forces roots to go very, very deep into the soil. And the further down you go into the soil, the closer they get, that forces them to find water essentially. So that's really good for our vines to establish into the soil to try to find that water. But so that's why we're able to do that. But our vines go about 15 feet deep, I believe it is, until I can actually access some sort of water. Took a while to get there, of course. They had to grow into that, but they're there now. So, but yeah, dry farming or, good old irrigation, but that's what we have to, yeah.
Do I have time for one more question?
Yes, we can do one more question. That's fine.
Okay, sorry, it's the last one. What gravitated you to the company that you work for now?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Honestly, this was my first job that I actually good old applied, like saw the job posted, put my name in. Actually, when I went to the website to familiarize myself, like a chat box popped up. It was totally trying to sell me wine. But I was like, how can we help you? I was like, well, screw it. I was like, I'm applying for this job. Do you happen to have the hiring manager's email? I'd love to just reach out and send her my resume. And they gave it to me. And we sent it to them. And I did have to, I think they told me I had 15 people also interviewing, but I straight up just got the job, which my previous roles actually I got from Johnson & Wales. Thank you, alumni. I actually got through that. So more, but you know what I mean? But the direction of the company, I actually swore I'd never work for another family again after a rough go at working directly for a married couple that about drove me crazy. So I swore I'd never do it again. And then I saw it was like two brothers and, got to hear the reputation of them. And it was astounding. I mean, when you get to know them, they are just two genuinely good people. They don't fight. They don't bring, even their kids who work for the winery, unless their name says Dow, but you'd never know. It's just a really remarkable place. You could tell from the outside, it's a remarkable place to work, and just, again, genuinely good people. We like to say we're a people company in the wine industry, and you could see that before I even applied. So I really landed on a real gem getting here. And it looked good from the out, and then I'm 5 years later, I'm still here, and they'll have to kick me out of here. So it was definitely, and the wine was good. I wasn't going to sell bad wine. Apparently I said that in my interview and I don't remember that, but they said they remember me saying that. I told them I wouldn't sell wine. I wouldn't want to drink. And I really liked it. So
they gave you bonus points for that.
Yeah. Unknown. I was like, oh, sweet. Didn't think I was doing anything cool, but here we go. So, yeah, if look for good people, it definitely pays off for sure.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And shouts out to you. Thanks for the information. I graduated in 2013. So.
Right after. Yeah.
Yeah. So right after you. So.
Oh, nice to meet you.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Nice to meet you as well.
Of course.
Well, those were great questions. Thank you for those. So just to wrap up this evening, Caitlyn, thank you so much for teaching us about summer wines this evening. We're so grateful that you shared your time and knowledge with us and your fellow alumni. Your love for JWU and passion for beverage education is so appreciated. Thank you to those in attendance today. As we're navigating through an ever-changing landscape, JWU continues to provide a truly unique and exceptional education that prepares our students for future success. The support of alumni donors plays a pivotal role in the ability for us to continue to be on the cutting edge of experiential learning and providing an exceptional student experience. Your registration included a donation to the JWU Charlotte College of Hospitality Management, and we thank you for your support. If you're in a position to make an additional gift and you'd like to pay it forward to current and future students, please consider supporting the next generation of leaders in the evolving global hospitality industry. Please do so by clicking the link in the chat. Gifts of all sizes from the entire JWU community combine to have an impact on our students and is truly powerful. As an alumni donor, your gift also demonstrates your investment in our mission, which can inspire additional support from other members of the JWU community, as well as corporate donors and foundations. Thank you again for your support. We sincerely hope that you enjoyed this evening's session on summer wines, part of the JWU For You family of programming. For the full listing of upcoming events, which will start up again in August, please visit our events calendar at alumni.jwu.edu. We appreciate your attendance and wish you a wonderful evening. Thank you all so much for being here. Have a great night.